afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all feeling creative this afternoon. Is anyone here an artist by chance? Raise your hands. Oh, hello. And also, because artists usually don't like calling themselves artists, does anyone here make art? I got more. Okay, that's wonderful. Okay, so let's get talking. Today we're going to talk about CSS art, and anyone who has made digital art before, this might be slightly familiar to you, but with a new strategy on how to do it. So let's see. I love when this happens, guys. Okay, well, my name is Max, as you heard. This is me. I'm a software engineer. I am also an artist. I usually work in traditional media, and my art is usually made out of lines. Usually none of the lines are very straight. And when I work in digital, I try as hard as I can to reproduce traditional styles. So I've done that in CSS, hopefully. You'll see that in a second. I also have been really interested in front-end development lately. So I think CSS Art is going to merge those two pretty well. Let's find out. So if you're wondering, here's kind of what CSS Art is. It's a picture made out of pure CSS. That means you get two options. You have HTML page and you have a style sheet. That's all. It's also kind of invisible, as I like to say. If you try to interact with it on your HTML page, you'll get nothing. This is what happened when I tried to, I knew it would happen, but I tried to save my completed piece of CSS art. It shows as a web page. So there's nothing there technically. It's pretty cool. And also made out of HTML elements. If you want to make an interesting shape that you can't make with a single div element, you have to kind of fake it. Here is 4 out of maybe 50 circles that make up a single cloud. So it's fun. Okay, I didn't do this. Immediately, I'm going to share that. This is a really famous piece of CSS art. Her name is Francine, and she is lovely, and she was made by a developer called Diana Smith. As you can see, Francine looks like an oil painting, a little bit. And Diana Smith has used some, what I think are pretty great oil painting techniques to make this. One thing, if you notice, there are no lines here. In reality, there are no lines. There's no line really separating this shirt from my arm, obviously, so you kind of have to fake it. She does that by using shadows next to highlights to give a perception of difference, even within the same color. Everything here is blue, but here is a shadow and here is a highlight, and that's how you can tell that there is a fold in her dress. So that's pretty complex to do in CSS, and I was wondering, why did she choose to do that? Why are there no lines? No borders. Let's get talking about that. So not just Smith, a lot of people have been making interesting CSS art. If you want to check some out, here it is, cssart.com. It's kind of like a place where people post things that they made. This was my first introduction to CSS art, actually, looking through here. As you can see, lots of different styles, lots of different skill levels. There is a photorealistic mobile phone right here, which I actually want to start thinking about how they did that. But there it is. So I'm going to make my very own piece of CSS art. If I'm starting this out for the first time, here's kind of what my thought process was like. First, I need a reference image. You start a new media for the first time, it's good to either reproduce something or use something that you can see. And since there's nothing like that, I'm going to use a reference image. I chose something called the Wheel of Fortune, which is a tarot card. It has significance. It means chance and surprise and not knowing how things are going to turn out. Thought that was pretty good for a new strategy. So I did some research to try to start making the Wheel of Fortune. I found this article. If you want to get started with CSS art, I recommend it. It's very good. It helps you make a little ice cream cone with a smiley face. And I was so proud of myself when I did this. I had never done CSS art before, so there it is. I was immediately ready to start something more difficult. Here's my ice cream cone! You can make this too. Notice one thing about this ice cream cone though, and that is no borders. There are no outlines here, no lines. As a line enthusiast, I was starting to get a little bit worried. Why are there no lines? Well, here is my completed project. So this is what I ended up making. This is my representation of the Wheel of Fortune. I chose cats, because I like cats a lot, but usually it's a lot of different animals here. I have borders here. This I had to fake, basically. A lot of different circles here using the border top, border right, border left sort of thing, overlaid with new div layers that are the same color so you can't tell that the border goes all the way around. A lot of fiddling with it, testing, trial and error, and things like that. But absolutely worth it. This was a lot of fun. So, my technique. I'm going to show it off. Here is the symbols along the outside of the Wheel of Fortune. It's a bit simple, so I thought this would be good to see. Every single symbol, let's start with this one, is wrapped inside of its div elements. And inside of that are all the different shapes that make up that character. I can't just make 1, 2, 3 strokes done. You have to pretend that you can do that. Here's how it works. So we start by creating that container, that outer element. And this is a really good strategy, but I didn't know that until after I did it, but here's why I chose to do that. In traditional media, in oil painting and whatnot, you start with a bottom layer that isn't going to be visible in your finished product. It should be 2 colors usually, one that represents a shadow and one that represents a highlight. I like purple and yellow. So I was not going to use this really tacky bright pink color, so I chose that to be my base. And knowing that it's not going to be shown at the end, it ended up helping me a lot. So the first detail here goes inside. The base of the T is, it's not really a T, but this is the most obvious shape, so I did that one first. And from there, you arrange the details. When I made the next shape, it went here. I had to use margin and position them, so that's total 1, 2, 3, 4 details making up the shape of the T. Now I can hide my base layer that I don't need anymore, so just take away background color, and there it is in position. Okay, so what I learned from doing this? A lot. And it was really challenging to me at first because I didn't know strategy. I couldn't really use HTML so well in my front-end development yet. But after going through this, I noticed that I can get a lot more creative with the CSS styles that I use now in the apps that I'm developing. So this wonderful quote is from an article that I looked up in my initial research. Also, if you want to try making CSS art, pretty good article. Time to break it. A good part about CSS art is actually that it only works in certain Chrome browsers, and that's all. And when you look at Francine, that beautiful oil painting I showed at the beginning, the developer had a warning. It said, this probably won't look that great outside of Chrome, so anything else it's gonna just break. And everyone who read that said, oh really? And immediately proceeded to break Francine. So let's look at some examples of Francine. In Internet Explorer, I love her. Alright, and here she is in Chrome 9. Pretty good, she has some shapes now, she's getting there. And here she is in Internet Explorer 5. This one is by far my favorite. So I was waiting to finish my Wheel of Fortune, my experiment, so I could do this to my own art, because, wow, this is a dream, isn't it? So here is the Wheel of Fortune, completely broken. Internet Explorer 7. I love it. Squares. Apparently, border radius. Not really a thing yet in this operating system. Safari 10 did an okay job. Only thing I noticed is, yeah, the positioning is horrible and a mess. The borders are still here. My border top strategy breaks in Safari, so now I know that. Borders just show up all the way around anyway. Firefox 7, I don't know what they're doing. I've made some sort of cat moon god. Thank you. I don't know. But basically, I spent weeks choosing little tiny numbers and editing, and positioning everything just so. and then I put it into this browser, and it does this. And I think it's beautiful. There's a quote from Picasso that I must talk about right now, which is, I spent 4 years trying to learn to paint like Raphael, and a lifetime learning to paint like a child. Artists need to learn how to break their composition, how to make things look like it's unintentional. This is pure art here. This computer is the child. It has created art kind of better than I could possibly imagine. Just my opinion. Anyway, moving on. I also did another little experiment, which is making pixel art in CSS. I had not known that that was a thing until I started my research, so of course I had to do it. The strategy is entirely different. Not a lot of positioning goes on. You just make a grid of pixels and use this nth child strategy to the number of pixels. You color it in, simple background, one line here, and then you animate it. We'll go over that code in a little bit. This is what I ended up doing. This is every phase of the moon in purple. So every single one of these is a different style sheet. And because you have to go line, 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 nth child, nth child, nth child, it's probably like thousands of lines of code. But fun and good. Here's how I did it. I started with a grid of pixels. As you can tell, I didn't end up using that color again. That strategy worked really well for me. Pick a color you will never see again. It's so helpful. Set the pixel background. Whatever. Put my number in, and I moved on with my life. And drew the outline by number. It's very easy to just start with a circle. Next thing I did is I filled in the flat color. This is not necessary for making pixel art in CSS, but this is how a lot of traditional media works. Printmaking and painting in ink and whatnot. Visualize the layer of color that you need. After this, I went on and I did the lightest shadow, everything, then the darkest shadow, everything. And then when the shadows were done, the last thing I did was the highlights. So here are all the layer colors. That's a lot of different layers of color. I probably reassigned the pixel color several times. Coding practice, debatable. Artistic practice, wonderful. Please do it. And at the end, remove the grid and the background, and here it is, the moon. Into that a little bit more, I decided to animate it. Here is a GIF version of my animation. It is usually 100% smooth. Try that. So animating was just a blast because, like I said, I wrote thousands of lines of code of individual pixels. And all I had to do was very little. First, make a sprite sheet. This is a PNG image of all of my generated moons right next to each other in a line. So I'm going to, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, say I want this to divide into 8 little sections here. That is all it is. This is just one development. This is it. Animation. I'm done. And so, yeah, so 310 by 310 done 8 times using this image. It's going to animate for me. I use keyframe to set the position to negative width of the entire object, and that is all. And then it just goes. It's really easy, and if you're interested in animating with pixel art, I recommend it. Anyway, so what did I learn from this experience? First, better understanding of HTML. Trying to apply that do your base layer first and then paint over it traditional media technique really helped me understand the concept of a container a lot better. It's very clear. And more creativity in front-end design. You can get a little bit weird with the things that you want to make, and it's great. In one of my projects, in the middle of doing this, I put like a crescent moon on the side of one of my developments, just because I could. And patience. Maybe you can tell, this takes a very long time to do, but thank you for nodding. But it's really rewarding to see what comes out in the end. Hard way to do something easy. Here I am talking about that vector art, the first example that I did. I could have drawn that in like an hour, maybe. I don't do vectors that much, but I could have rendered that maybe in a day. It took me weeks to do this, so just a different strategy, I guess. But easier way to do something difficult. I find creating pixel art to be really hard. So in the context of pixels. Knowing what number on the grid your pixel is going into every single time makes it really clear what you're working with. I would recommend this, again, if you want to improve your CSS skills, if you're kind of confused about how do you even make CSS art, try it out. You will learn a lot right away. Okay, well, thank you everyone for listening. This is my lovely moon phases repository, and this is the Wheel of Fortune. So if you want to go examine that, look at just how many lines of code it is and whatnot, try to break it. Please try to break it. Go ahead. And yeah, my contact information is over here if you want to talk about CSS art some more. But thank you, everybody.